Thank you very much, Mr. President. I took my assignment as the Secretary-General's Special Envoy for Yemen and began on the 11th of March. I approached this with gratitude to the Secretary-General for his trust and a sense of privilege that I might get the chance to do something to bring this great tragedy to a belated end. We know that resolving Yemen's conflict may only come from an agreement among its leaders to put aside their differences and for them to agree to deal with them, not through battle, but through dialogue and debate. To put Yemenis first, therefore, is not merely proper and right, it is the only way we will find peace.
Looking forward to hearing from Martin Griffiths, the new Special Envoy on Yemen. I think everybody knows that we want to bring the war on Yemen to a close. There are lots of important stakeholders in this. The missile attacks on Saudi Arabia really do need to stop, but we really want to back Martin as he starts up efforts to drive the political process.
Mr. President, there is good news and bad news, and I apologize for this cliché, but it is the truth. The good news, and this is my principal message to the members of the Council today, is that a political solution to end this war is indeed available. Its outlines are no secret. The end of fighting, the withdrawal of forces and handover of heavy weapons in key locations, together with an agreement on the establishment of an inclusive government, one which brings the parties together in a consensus to build peace. This can be done. All those with whom I spoke, from the widest range of the Yemeni political spectrum, have told me that they want this, that they want it quickly, that they will work with the United Nations to achieve it, and that they are conscious of the consequence, as in all agreements between enemies, that mutual concessions will be required. Let me emphasize, however, that a successful outcome of negotiations, never to be guaranteed, will require patience, diligence, and good faith between the parties.
Mr. President, humanitarian agencies have scaled up assistance and strengthened their capacity in Yemen. The relief operation is one of the largest and most complex in the world. 190 partners, most of them Yemeni organizations, get help to millions of people in thousands of locations every single month. Last year, we increased the coverage of food assistance from 3 million people a month in January to more than 7 million a month in December. For 2018, the World Food Programme have plans to reach 10 million people a month. And we're doing the same thing in other sectors, including water, health, sanitation, and other core services. The humanitarian operation in Yemen is already one of the largest in the world, with 5 humanitarian hubs in place to coordinate assistance across the country, and we're exploring opening more, including in Marib and Mukalla. Every week, dozens of humanitarian movements, including food convoys, and hundreds of specific humanitarian locations are deconflicted by the parties to the conflict. We're able to reach people in all 333 districts, and in each district, we aim to collect data on how many people receive aid every month.
Mr. President, it is no surprise that stopping a war is not at all the same as building peace. And so it goes in Yemen. We must first turn our energies to the business of stopping the war. The parties necessary for this task, this specific task, are those whose decisions can contribute to bringing an end to this war.
Mr. President, earlier this month, Sweden, Switzerland and the Secretary-General co-chaired a pledging conference for Yemen. In the words of the Secretary-General, quote, "It was a remarkable success of international solidarity. 40 member states and regional organizations pledged more than $2 billion. Thank you for that generosity. Allow me particularly to recognize the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates for their $930 million contribution to the humanitarian response plan. This was not just an exceptionally large contribution. It was also prompt, swift, unearmarked, and unconditional. And it has already been fully dispersed.
This will be the agenda of transition, to include reconciliation, the first item that requires our attention at the end of a conflict, constitutional review, reconstruction, and the rebuilding of state institutions. This is about, therefore, transforming the state. Making this work will require the full involvement of civil society to ensure that the process goes beyond politics and it reflects the aspirations of all Yemenis.
The record on this issue remains mixed. There have been improvements. UN humanitarian flights and vessels are moving regularly. That is positive. But we remain very concerned about commercial imports through all of Yemen's ports, most particularly Hodeidah and Salif. Before the war, Yemen relied on imports to cover 90% of staple foods and nearly all its medicine and fuel needs. Commercial shortages and delays at ports have led to sharp increases in the price of food and household necessities. Ports are the lifeline of Yemen. We're encouraging all those concerned to accelerate the normalization of commercial shipments into Hodeidah and Salif, as well as to Yemen's other ports. We are worried that shipping companies are reluctant to enter Yemeni waters. The reasons are related to problems with foreign exchange in the banking sector, as well as the ports. But the result is that insufficient food is being imported, and that needs to be addressed. Price increases, especially of food, are forcing hundreds of thousands of destitute families to turn to humanitarian assistance for their very survival. We're also concerned that Sana'a Airport remains closed to commercial traffic, preventing thousands of critically ill patients from travelling abroad to seek treatment unavailable in Yemen. And on several occasions over the last month, military activities conducted in the proximity of the airport have affected humanitarian flights. Last week, there were serious incidents close to humanitarian locations which had been deconflicted. We're working closely with all parties to ensure that they are not repeated.
Mr. President, I said there was good news, but also bad news. There is a saying that the darkest hour is the one that comes before dawn, and let us hope that this is the case. It will not be news to you, sir, or the members of this council, that the war has, if anything, become louder and more pressing these last few weeks. I'm concerned about the increased number of ballistic missiles launched towards Saudi Arabia, and I note that this council has already pronounced on this. In addition, I'm concerned about the intensified military operations in Sada Governorate. Military confrontations and air strikes have continued in numerous other areas of Yemen, including Sana'a, Taiz, Al-Jawf, Marib, Al-Hodeidah, Hajja, Al-Baida, and Laj governorates. The clashes continue without major changes in the front lines, but with disturbing reports of civilian casualties. We also, and this is an issue of great importance to us, hear unconfirmed reports that movements of forces in Yemen are on the increase, and that the prospect of intensive military operations in Al-Hodeidah, long heralded, may soon be forthcoming. Our concern is simple, that any of these developments would, at a single stroke, take peace off the table. I'm convinced there's a real danger of this. We all need, urgently and creatively, to find ways to diminish the chances of these game-changing events upsetting and derailing the very real hopes of the great majority of Yemenis. People of Yemen are in desperate need